Why is Bitcoin so simple, but yet so hard to understand?
People have forgotten what money is. If you ask people what money is, no one has an answer.
The thing that we get rewarded for, right? Our time and energy, that we get rewarded in something that can be infinitely created and therefore is losing its value constantly. Is that the biggest thing people should learn about money and finance?
What are you exchanging your time and labor for? Is it the most pure form of hard money that cannot be debased?
Of course, I'm focused on millennials, but I think even more for younger people, but also people your age. Okay, where are we going? Should I do something about that now?
Say you needed $10,000 right now to go on like the most epic vacation, like you needed $10,000. And if we use 7% debasement in 20 years, if I multiply that by 1.07, now you need $38,000 in 20 years to do the same vacation. And is your financial planning for your millennial future self going to get you there? A nurse who is contributing to our community so beautifully, and she or he has to go home and turn into some stock market guru, option trading guru, real estate guru.
Exactly.
But we know if she or he does not do that, they're on a life essentially to serfdom, in my opinion, because if you extrapolate out 10, 20, 30 years of their life, their income's not keeping up with the debasement. And I think Bitcoin brings us back to people living their true selves and being rewarded for it. And we're all better off for it.
Hey there, I want to ask you for a quick favor. Over the past few months, I've had over 50,000 returning viewers and listeners to this podcast, but over 65% of you haven't subscribed yet. So if you enjoy what I'm doing and you find my content valuable, please subscribe on YouTube or follow me on your favorite podcasting platform. This will help me fuel the algorithm and spread the message on Bitcoin even further. I really appreciate your support. Now let's dive into this episode. All right, Tom Karadza, welcome to Bitcoin for Millennials.
Hey, pleasure to meet you. Nice to know that you've also been in Croatia on the Croatian islands. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
Yeah.
Anyone who's been out there is a friend of mine. It's a beautiful part of the world.
We just talked about this off mic, that you're from that area. I love that country, man. It's amazing weather, amazing food, lovely people. So yes, would recommend anyone to go there. But I'm happy you're on as well. I also just mentioned to you before we started, like I saw you interviewing Preston Pish, and you said something that triggered me. I don't remember what, but I was like, okay, I need to talk to this guy. So here we are. I also think I saw a tweet of you, but I think I have a fun question to start with that you'll probably riff on. But and that is, why is Bitcoin so simple, but yet so hard to understand?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Geez. I think we've forgotten as a population, and definitely in the Western world or in North America and Canada, where I'm born in Canada to two immigrant parents here. People have forgotten what money is. If you ask people what money is, no one has an answer. I think Bitcoin is difficult for people to grasp because they cannot define money. And we've been in a system for so long. Like I'm born in the 1970s. You're much younger than me, Bram, but we're all born in this era where we're living in a fiat world where it's the dollar, the system representing money has been so bastardized. Nobody has a good definition of what money is. You just know that you go to work and you get paid in this thing called dollars. You don't know behind the scenes how money is created in the current system. So because you can't define what money is, when you are staring at the best form of money that humanity has ever seen, with the best monetary properties that we have ever seen, the most saleable across scales, the most saleable across time, the most saleable across space. When you see a form of money of such quality, because you can't define what money is to begin with, you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So when I tell my friends that this is the best form of money, because they can't define what money is, they don't know what we're staring at. And it's just, I feel like it's a time in history where we're going to look back, someone's going to look back and see centuries of gold and silver being used as money, and then central banks popping in and out for a little while, and then perhaps something as Bitcoin being held as the best form of money for hundreds and hundreds of years going forward. And in the middle was this like fiat system where you and I reside. Yeah. And because we were born and lived in it, people forgot what money is, can't define it. And as a result, they can't see what Bitcoin represents to their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. Of course, this is a topic we talk about a lot, but I mean, I know, well, you know him too, Leon Wankum. He's also into real estate. We'll talk about real estate in a
Great
sec.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing guy. He has like a master's. He's a master's in economics, and he told me I never learned what money is. And then I always think, well, how do humble plebs like us, how should we know what money is, right? If someone that has a degree like that, and well, I would expect that he would know what money is if he doesn't know, right? I had an interesting experience a few weeks ago. I was in the States, and I got into my hotel room pretty late when I arrived, and I already had some dollars in my pocket. And I emptied my pockets when I was like getting into my room, and I looked at my dollar. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I talk about this so much, right? But now I'm holding this dollar, and I was like looking at it, just just thinking about all the things that I talked about with people, and then I saw there's this little stamp on it, like a little, like literally like the tiny letters of a bill, right? And I didn't know this before, but I read, and I'll read it to you. It says, "This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private." And also on the top, right, it says like Federal Reserve note. And then I realized, I knew that, but I was holding it like just a piece of paper doesn't have value, right? Like it says 1, 5, or 10, or 20, or 100. But there's no value in the paper itself. It literally says on the paper that it's based on debt, right? So it's not that the thing that you're holding has inherent value. And I found that so fascinating. And I think it ties back to what you said. Like if you ask people what is money, they will get a bill or a coin from their pocket and they say like this. But the thing itself doesn't have value. But the thing that you exchange it for, right? Like your time and energy, that is real value, because that's super, super finite, right? Like your human time and energy you can expend in that time is super finite. And I think it's just such a fascinating thing that we trade it for something that is not even, it doesn't even have value. We didn't even agree that it has value, right? Like when did you agree that you would use this money? Did you ever,
Yeah, we all give up our most precious thing, our time and our labor, in exchange for something that someone else can just print into existence forever. We talk about that a lot with our clients in our, in our real estate brokerage, that M2 in Canada is going up 7% compounded a year. M2 money supply is kind of like the dollars represented in our savings and checkings accounts. So I think it's including the money market funds. So it's included like the liquid forms of money in the economy. And when you can dilute those liquid forms of money at a rate of 7% compounded annually, our purchasing power gets cut in half every 10 years. So if you're working away at a job, and I think this is what produces a lot of angst in people, is that if they're not doubling their income every 10 years, they're not keeping up with just the devaluation of the currency. And people can't see it. They don't understand. When you try to talk to people about this and you say, hey, listen, inflation is at like 3%, the government reported inflation. They don't really care to consider that much because they're busy with their lives and they think their incomes are going to go up 3%. They'll get a raise that's 3%. So they're good. And that's the maximum amount of thought that's put into it.
Yeah.
But we both know that inflation is a vector, as Michael Saylor would say, and that if M2, the amount of money in anyone's economy, is going up 7% compounded a year, if you're even getting a 3% raise, you're still behind 4% a year compounded. And after 1 or 2 years, it might not feel like much, but after 5, 10, 15, and 20 years, it's a devastating burden where you can't afford things around you and you don't understand why. And then as M2 grows in an economy, the amount of liquid dollars in an economy, it spills into the economy in different ways. It spills into real estate often in Canada first. So real estate prices really go high first. So people then associate real estate as just a good thing to buy because it goes up in dollar price first. So they look at the symptom, which is real estate prices going up, because when people create mortgages, a lot of M2 is created. So the new dollars go into the real estate market first. So real estate prices go up a lot. And they look at the symptom of the problem, that new dollars are being created, causing real estate prices to go up because of the devaluation of the currency. They look at that symptom and associate real estate as a good thing to buy because it goes up in dollar price. They don't see that it's going up in price because the dollars are being devalued.
Are you looking to save in Bitcoin for your retirement? Meet OnRamp, the leader in Bitcoin financial services. OnRamp has just launched the industry's first Bitcoin IRA with multi-institution custody. That means unparalleled support, transparency, and peace of mind for your retirement. With OnRamp, you can verify your assets directly on-chain and protect them with the support of 3 independent institutions, eliminating the risks of a single point of failure. Are you ready to take control of your Bitcoin retirement? Visit the link below or go to onrampbitcoin.com to learn more about OnRamp's Bitcoin IRA.
But it's kind of like
an interesting loop also, right? It's like a self-enforcing
chicken and an
loop.
egg, right? Yeah.
Well, I wanted to make the joke, but Tom, the GDP goes up, right? The number is up. The percentages are up, right? Like when they say in a country like, oh, but our GDP is up. We are growing our productivity, and it's not a joke, right? But it's kind of like this nominal talking game. It's like, oh, GDP went up with this percent. Okay, that's green. That's good, right? Or when they say, well, the inflation is 3%. Oh, but well, the target is 2, so 3 is close or something. Like it feels like there's this nominal. There's like a veil or something that is covering like the real thing that you would actually want to talk about, right? Because 3 instead of 2% is 50% more than you actually intended, right? But it feels like most people are talking on that level of like, okay, well, whatever, basically, right? Like it's not, the deeper layer is just not talked about. But and I wanted to ask you, do you think like, is this the biggest thing that people should realize about money and finance? Like that the thing that we share or that we get rewarded for, right? Our time and energy, that we get rewarded in something that can be infinitely created and therefore is losing its value constantly. Is that the biggest thing people should learn about money and finance, or is there another thing you think?
No, that is the biggest thing, is that where are you exchanging your time and labor for? What are you exchanging your time and labor for? Is it the most pure form of hard money that cannot be debased in the world? Or are you exchanging your time and labor for something that can be debased? So for example, in Canada, I'm in the Toronto area. We're about an hour, just outside an hour from the US border. So if somebody here in Canada does a real estate transaction, they earn a commission. So that commission, let's just say that commission, they save that money. Let's say that money is $5,000. Someone is born 90 minutes south of here, they do the exact same activity. They earn $5,000, but in US dollars instead of Canadian dollars. Canadian dollars are losing value much faster than American dollars. So much so that now for us in Canada to go to the US, it's $1.40 Canadian to get $1 American. So a lot of Canadians right now at this time are saying, oh my gosh, it's expensive to take a family vacation to Florida. But if they did the exact same transaction, an hour and a half, and did the same real estate transaction and exchanged their time and labor for basically the same job, but 90 minutes south of here, they're earning a harder currency. And that you have 2 different lives based on what? And we have that all going around the world where everyone's earning different currencies. It's ridiculous. And to your GDP point earlier, it's so fascinating because people will always associate GDP up as a good thing. But what does GDP represent? GDP represents consumer purchases, government purchases, and investment. Consumer expenditures, government expenditures, and investment. Why are we wanting that number to go up? Don't we want things to get cheaper? Wouldn't it be better to measure for us $1,000 worth of savings in Canada? The average Canadian citizen could buy X number of goods and services.
Yeah, exactly.
And we would want that number to go up. We don't want the things
or down, like.
Yeah, we want the expenses to go down.
Let the cheaper, right? Yeah.
Let the prices get cheaper and the savings increase in value. Yeah. So people have somehow associated up with good, but we must question, what are we measuring?
Yes.
We are measuring things getting more expensive, which then means our dollars are losing value. So we're again expressing something, GDP up, as a good thing, where GDP up should really be something that we don't really want. We want our dollar, our savings, to be able to purchase more goods and services, not less.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is kind of been bastardized through a system that no one has questioned all through my grade school, my high school, and my university. Nobody questions it.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, to me, this is very personal, Bram, because I mentioned to you before we started recording that I went every summer over to Croatia, and my family's from a village over there, so they don't have much money. And my aunt moved to a city called one aunt out of my many aunts moved to a city called Split, right on the coast, which you know where that is, on the Adriatic coast. And she started selling eggs at the market. That's what she did. She would go to the villages, collect up eggs, take the bus into the city. She would sell eggs. Over time, she started realizing people were looking to exchange their dinars for German marks, because German marks in the 1970s and the 1980s, when she was doing that, were keeping their value more than the dinars. She started selling eggs, but on the side, she was a widower. She wore a big black dress with a black scarf over her head. And in her dress, she would keep German marks. And on the side of selling the eggs, she would accept dinars and give German marks. And she would make, I guess, a commission on that exchange, right? She was a hustler there in the market making her exchange. But there was demand for people exchanging German marks for dinars. So when inflation gets bad enough, like it was in the 1980s in that area of the world, people know to get rid of their currency. And then the communist government then caught her doing that, and she went to jail for 4 months. So she went to jail, and listen to her crime. Her crime was trying to help people exchange a currency that was losing value for a currency that held value.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of shows you that you're also forced to use the currency that of the country that you live in, right? I use that a lot. Like, you are forced to use it. And if you don't want to use it, well, nobody wants to accept another thing, right? So there's never been an agreement where I said, okay, I agree to use this money. You're basically forced to use the money. And well, if you help people to, exchange it for stronger money, then, you can get busted for that. But I also wanted to talk about the initial example you had. I think that's a great example, right? Like, if 3 human beings do exactly the same thing, they have the same output, they make the exact same product or deliver the exact same service, but one does it in Canada, the other does it in Congo, and the other does it in Singapore, they basically get rewarded differently for the same amount of human productivity. And once I realized that, I thought, okay, but that's crazy, because if the person in Singapore is better than the one in Canada, I would love to hire the person in Singapore, right? But well, maybe they can't even get my euros, or whatever. Like, there's like this web that you then fall into of like restrictions and rules and all these things. But eventually the goal is to, well, not let your currency be how do you say that, like lose value because other currencies are stronger, right? So you want to keep your currency in your country. Like, we cannot pay with Singapore dollars or in Canada, or with euros in Singapore, right? So the whole point is to just keep your own currency strong. And once I realized that is like, it's like a war, right? It's like a war between countries or blocks to project their power over each other. I realized, okay, but then I'm just lucky that I was born here, and you somewhat lucky that you're in Canada, right? But it's so random. The place that you're born, you get a certain currency, and well, hopefully it's a currency that your own country makes, right? Because there's also countries that have the American dollar as their national currency, or there's these 12 or 15 countries in Africa that have a currency that's created by France, that France doesn't even use, only to buy uranium, right? Like, once you realize those things, it's like, okay, but why isn't there a global money? Why isn't there a money? Well, then of course we get to Bitcoin. But for me, that was a big eye opener, thinking about it like that, or actually seeing that, even realizing that exists.
Bram, how old are you? How did you get? I don't understand. I know a bit of your journey, but the fact that you were able to go down that rabbit hole and figure that out. You're in your what are you in your 30s?
Late 30s, yeah.
Late 30s. I mean, it's a testament to you to be able to figure that out. Like most people. I mean, today we're recording this as Bitcoin's touching new all-time highs. Mm-hmm. And it's, I'm sure you do the same thing. Once you've gone down the rabbit hole, I had to go over to the mall down the street for a few items. And you look around and you just wonder, is everyone else walking around here? They do not realize that their currency is being devalued about the most pristine asset in the world, the best form of money in the world. So credit to you to go down this rabbit hole. I mean, most people in their 30s are not doing this. And I didn't get it at first. We were using real estate and have been and still do use real estate as the best store of value. And I think most Canadians, that's what they still look at. Real estate is looked at as the best store of value that the average Canadian can acquire to build some financial net worth.
But do you think that's a conscious, well, maybe you help people with understanding that, right? But I feel like it's not as a conscious choice as we are making with Bitcoin, right? It's kind of like, oh, well, I should invest in real estate. The entire word invest, I think, is already interesting, right? I see Bitcoin as a savings vehicle, basically, less as an investment. But I don't think it's that conscious. It's just like following what other people do or seeing examples of people or people teaching you, right? But yeah, do you think otherwise, or would you agree?
Yeah, I think, no, you're right. I think when you discover Bitcoin, something unique happens that it's like you've seen the light, and you want to get into Bitcoin. Real estate, I feel like, is more looked upon as a necessary evil. It's more like, I went to work, I'm doing work. I realize I'm not getting ahead, but hey, these real estate prices keep going up. I better buy some real estate. Okay, fine. Help me buy some real estate. Should I get a student rental property or buy a duplex or a small multi-unit building? And okay, I'll deal with the banks and get this loan and learn about interest rates and dealing with tenants and leases and the whole thing. And I think people are pushed into a corner and forced into the real estate market because the way the money system is. So they kind of do it begrudgingly. They are not like excitedly buying Bitcoin like you and I are probably looking at Bitcoin like, oh my gosh, how are we so fortunate to be able to buy this stuff at these prices? So yeah, real estate, I feel like it is looked upon a little differently, like it's a necessary evil that you are forced to go into, put forth by the central banking system of the country that you're in. It's not like you're excitedly choosing to get into it.
Yeah.
And, before Bitcoin, I'm thankful it has existed. My brother and I started this business, Rockstar Real Estate, in 2008. And we didn't, Bitcoin didn't exist in 2008, came very shortly afterwards. But that was the only thing you could really do. You were kind of pushed into it. And then, Bram, and I'm sure this happens to you as well, or in the media there as well, then investors get vilified because a lot of the media then all the media will say, well, investors are buying all the homes, so the prices are going up. And they don't realize that that's a second order effect of a broken monetary system that is pushing people to become investors. Yeah. If the monetary system wasn't broken, we would have lower not only would we have lower real estate prices, we would have real estate developers. Leon gets, Leon gets this in Germany. But we would have real estate developers who would be forced to build a better product. Yeah. Because people were buying real estate for the utility value, you have to compete on the utility value, so better make the utility value great. But because real estate has been turned into a monetary type asset, in the Toronto area, you can just throw up 60-story condo buildings where every condo is just like a box in the sky, very boring, brutal, doesn't nourish the soul, but they're selling like hotcakes because people are stuffing their money into them as a store of value. So you get bad product and high prices. Think about that.
Yeah, no, I think this is a perfect direction to go in, right? Because, once you realize that, real estate goes higher and higher because the money gets debased more and more, right? And let's say you're a real estate developer and you're asked, because there's such a shortage of homes, right, to put up a 60-story building. Yeah, where's the incentive to deliver quality or beauty or something special, right? Like that is something I think is also maybe a third order effect. But if I know that the reward I'm getting is shit, why would I deliver something extraordinary, right? Like why, right? And I think this is something. Yeah, I also realized just later, it's all incentives because. Let's say you would wanted to buy a home, right? And you put out the contract, and you say like, okay, come at me with your designs or whatever you would want to do. If there's like 3 people replying and one asks for Bitcoin as a payment and the other 2 ask fiat, you would probably choose the Bitcoin guy even before you've seen what he wants to build, right? Because you know that he values the reward as highly as you do, right? So he has to deliver real value in order to receive what we think is the best reward to ever exist. And the fact that the other two guys ask for fiat, yeah, it actually, it probably isn't even in their favor without them knowing it, right? Just because they're unaware of Bitcoin. But my point is more like, if you have a hard and special reward, you will do hard and special work, basically.
And I think I get a lot of that, when I travel to Europe and I look through some cities that were built during times of the usage of sound money, sound hard money. And central banks have come and gone through Europe's history, there's no doubt, but there have been times where hard money has been used for extended periods of time in Europe. And you can see the quality of some of the cities and the beautiful architecture. Like if you walk around a place like Munich, Germany, and you just look around at some of the buildings in Munich and the beauty of that city, and then you come to a city that emerged on the fiat standard. So if you look at a city like Toronto, where I'm from, that basically was built out during a complete fiat standard. When you look at like the downtown area, I mean, it's a great city. I guess it's an international city and there's lots of great restaurants and that kind of stuff. But if you just look at the beauty of it, there was no incentive to build anything that wasn't quick and fast to capitalize on the devaluation of the currency. So all the buildings look square. They're all built with a square glass. They all look the same. There's no artistry in them. There's no craftsmanship in them. And that's just because that city emerged during the fiat system that was in use at the time. And it doesn't, this is going to sound silly, I guess, to some people, but it doesn't nourish the soul.
No,
like when I walk around old European cities, like it nourishes the soul. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I think beauty, something being beautiful is kind of like a universal thing. You can have taste, but you cannot say that something is ugly when you know it's beautiful, right? Like it something can be beautiful, but not your taste or not your thing, right? So I would say like beautiful is kind of like a shared thing that people would recognize. But the crazy part about this is that I think like, well, if you are an architect, you are not some, dime a dozen person. You're a creative person. You want to make something dope, right? Or like something that can stand the test of time, or where people think like, wow, that's cool. Oh, that was made 100 years ago. Wow. Oh, by who? Like this person, because you know that if there's like a building or a cool promenade somewhere, or even a golf course, right? It's like, this is the architect. Like you're proud of your work. But as you said, if you just make a bland building that just, disappears between the other buildings, then there is also no nourishment, I would say, for the talent or the, creativity that you put into that work. So it's, it's kind of similar in that way.
Yeah. And I think, with the beauty of Bitcoin to me is not only that it allows people to plan for the future, which is to me very important, because how can people plan for the future right now? Like, Bram, you're young, but think of somebody who's a bit older than me, like 58, 60, thinking for retirement. Let's say they're going to live till they're 90. What inflation rate do they use to plan for their retirement? Never mind what a millennial needs to plan for.
Compound.
Like, what is a millennial going to plan for? I'm not saying to have sympathy for the 58 or 59-year-old, but I mean, genuinely, what interest rate do they plan for? Or what inflation rate, do they plan for? And when they go to their financial planner, who's probably using some historic inflation rate of like 3% or 3%, or let's be aggressive and say 3.5%. But you and I both know M2 is debasing our currency at 7. These people at 58 years old who have worked their entire lives, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when they're 68 or 73 years old, they're going to have to be looking for coupon clipping isn't a thing anymore. The digital world is here, but they're going to be looking for sales and discounts at the grocery store because their dollar is not going to go far. They're going to be on a fixed income and they won't know why they're living a life of despair, even though they did all the things right. They worked hard their whole lives. They raised a family and they saved, but then they retired. And 15 years after retirement, they thought they were going to have enough money to go on vacation and do things, and they're not going to. That's what I don't like. And you're going to have older generation that are going to need to be cared for, and we'll care for them. I will care for my parents and the older generation around me for sure. But think they're not being rewarded for a lifetime of work. And now millennials, how are millennials are I don't know what inflation rate your friends are planning for in any retirement, even if they think of the concept of retirement anymore. Like,
I think the latter.
Think of that. Yeah. But like, what inflation rate are they planning for? and
To
are
be
they
honest,
using
when you just said this, it's the first time I thought about it in my life. But I never think about it because I have Bitcoin. But I mean, just this term, I never realized that. So
Good. Don't think about it. You have Bitcoin. You're good to go. You're good to go.
But I think it's
think of all the people around you.
It's a good point. Like, okay, in 20, let's say 33 years, right? So 2075, let's say pension starts even later. Let's say 20, I said 75. I meant 57. Let's say in 2060, if you're a millennial, like mid 30s, and 2060, you retire. Yeah, it's a fascinating question.
Quick question. If you have your Bitcoin in self-custody, where are you keeping your Bitcoin seed words? For me, there's only one way, and it's backing up my seed phrase with stamp seed. It's a single durable plate without any parts or materials. Stamp your words into solid titanium, which is fire-resistant, water-resistant, and built to last. Unlike etching or engraving, stamp seed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, making it easy for you to protect your generational wealth. Don't risk losing your seed phrase on paper. Get a stamp seed plate for unmatched protection. You can use code BRAM, that's BRAM, for 15% off at stampseed.com.
Actually,
well, and look at it this way. Let's say you needed $10,000 right now to go on like the most epic vacation. Like you needed $10,000, and if we use 7% debasement, and it's a dangerous example I'm about to use because the money leaks out into the economy at different rates to different things. Okay, so like it'll come into real estate first, it'll go into other things a little slower, so the prices change at different rates. But I'm going to use 7% in this example. If a $10,000 vacation today, in 20 years, if I multiply that by 1.07, and if I hit equals on my little iPhone calculator app 20 times, sorry, let me do this here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay. So now you need $38,000 in 20 years to do the same vacation.
Yeah. I love this. Yeah.
Is anyone planning? So is a millennial who's like, let's say, 38, 39, about to turn 40. And they're like, oh, I'm going to do this $10,000 vacation. Okay. Well, you better have $38,000 for your $10,000 vacation. And is your financial planning for your millennial future self going to get you there? Are you even giving any thought to that? Otherwise, because if it's not, you as the millennial today, what type of life are you going to live?
So many thoughts here, and also funny. We are still at my second question. I have so many questions, but I love this angle. Okay, it's interesting when you say like $10,000, right? The first word that comes up for me is units. So just think of it as money units, dollar units, because then for me, then the example became really tangible, right? Because when you hear dollars, you hear $10,000. Oh, that must be like a luxurious thing, right? That's a good vacation, 10K vacation, right? So that's like a fancy vacation. You go somewhere like something tropical, whatever. Okay, that sounds like something fancy, something of value, right? But if you think about it, to follow your example, okay, those are $10,000 units, and you said just based on the math, no opinion of the value or the type of vacation or whatever, right? Just based on the math, you need, what did you say,
38,000.
$38,000 units. Okay. So then I have two thoughts. But what if I only have $10,000 units, right? What if I only have $10,000 units? Because on the paper, I wrote down, or whatever I calculated, like, oh, I need $10,000 units per year because then I can have a fancy vacation every year in my retirement, right? Okay, so, but what if I only have 10,000 units? Well, 10,000 units at that time will give you a vacation that's similar to like 3,300 units right now. Well, is that the vacation you want? What is your perception of that, right? So I think that's something that people don't even think about. But also, okay, if you need 30,000 units or 38,000 units at that time for that holiday, what does that look like? Is that the same equivalent? Like, do we think that will improve? Or what is your perception of value of $36,000, right? Because if you live at that time, your perception of dollars probably doesn't really change, right? So your perception of $36,000 units is probably even more luxurious than what 10K would be now, right? So either way, well, you would get duped, right? Like you don't have money or the vacation sucks. It doesn't, it doesn't match your expectations. But just this thought is so interesting. And because you put this compounded interest in my head now, I feel like, yeah, you should plan for your retirement with the 38,000 units. Holy shit. Okay. Does my employer even contribute that? So then you kind of like work backwards towards like, I'm currently participating in something that I have zero clue about. That was my biggest realization. When
and
someone
then you're going to work every day, exchanging 8 hours a day at your employer, earning this income that you know is not going to be worth 38,000 for the vacation that you want in 20 years. So what's the purpose?
Yes.
What are you doing? What are we all doing? Like that is where Bitcoin breaks the mold, and it makes you think like, what am I doing? What am I exchanging my time and labor for? This time and labor that I'm exchanging my money for in the form of dollars or euros or whatever, it's not going to get me the things that I even can dream about at retirement. Not only that, it's barely paying for the bills today. It's barely making my life, livable today.
No, I mean, I use the example a lot in this podcast. Why do we joke that the bread was 25 cents? Well, maybe in your youth it was like 50 cents or something, and now it's $4. I don't know in Canada how many dollars, right? But now it's $4, and we laugh about it. Okay, but if your 10K holiday today is going to be 40,000 units when you retire, is that funny? That's not where you want to go. It's just. That would be a weird destination, but that would be the same as saying like, okay, well, the bread is $4 or $5 now. It's going to be 20 when you retire, right? You need $20 units to buy the same bread. So
I love thinking about that kind of stuff. And Greg Foss just laid something out for me a long time ago when he said, Tom, you realize the global debt in the world is about a 4-to-1 ratio of the economic activity. And he was rounding up, okay, to be fair. So 4-to-1. And he said something next that just blew my mind. He said, if there's 3% interest on the 4, and the 4, which is remember, $4 of debt for every $1 of economic activity, GDP, global GDP. I'm rounding here, but 4-to-1. If the 4 is growing at 3%, it's growing at 3%, the 4. What does the 1 have to grow at to just keep about the same spread between them? And the 1 has to grow at like it's roughly 12%. To grow if the 4 is growing at 3%, the 1 has to grow at 12%.
Yeah. Love it.
How is your income growing at 12%? Is your country's GDP growing at 12%?
If I can add to that, the GDP, right? The productivity, we should become, even if it would be 12%, right? We would become crazy good at making bread. But the bread would probably still be more expensive, right? While and your fellow Canadian Jeff Booth in the book behind you, The Price of Tomorrow, talks about this. The price should fall, but this example is so good because it shows you that the prices will only increase. Basically, that is the point, because you're never going to match 12% a year. Well, maybe if you follow one of your real estate classes, but I mean that's the joke, right? Like you are forced to become an investor. While if you're just a hardworking person and you have a family and you come home, you want to hang out with your family. You don't want to be behind the computer trying to be some Wall Street guy while you're living in the Midwest.
Some real estate tycoon.
Whatever. Right?
Yeah.
So, just the word that comes up is like, it's stupid.
And that's
it's
what
nonsensical.
It's nonsensical. Like, why would we have a nurse who is contributing to our community so beautifully where I live or where you live? And she or he has to go home and turn into some stock market guru, option trading guru, real estate guru,
exactly,
in hopes of, but we know if she or he does not do that, they're on a life essentially to serfdom, in my opinion, because if you extrapolate out 10, 20, 30 years of their life, their income's not keeping up with the debasement. Use your number, 7%, 12%, whatever your hurdle rate you think you need to keep up with life. And when I say 7% debasement or possibly 12% to keep up with debasement, that's just to keep your purchasing power as is today. most millennials want to get ahead financially. You dream of the house you want to buy, the vacations you want to take, the retire. So you have to beat this number, and you don't want to just beat it by 1%. And that to me is what Bitcoin represents. It's like, oh, finally, we have something for millennials or anyone to stick their time and labor into that is going to go up in value faster than that 7% debasement. And they're going to be able to save in real terms, get ahead.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I wanted to add too, when you said like it has to increase 12% a year just to be at the same place, right? To be equal. But the entire idea, and I think you would agree, what I personally strongly believe in, is that our entire goal as humans is to become more productive, is to be more effective, is to innovate and go forward, right? Like all the big innovations in the history of humanity is all like condensation of energy or information and stuff like that, right? Like that is what propelled us forward. But yeah, if I have to first play catch up for 12%, okay, where do I get the time to innovate? Or where does which person gets the time to think about philosophy or some innovation, or have just silence to think about ideas or let ideas come to you, right? You just don't have that. So I think the road that we're painting is pretty bleak, but I personally think it's very rational. It's just rationally going through, okay, this is where we're at. This is where we're going to go. How does that look for you? And I think, of course, I'm focused on millennials, but I think even more for younger people, but also people your age. Okay, where are we going? Why is this such a bleak picture? Should I do something about that now? Right. And I think, it's a very good talking point. I think we both agree.
Yeah, well, and it breaks the fabric of society, because when you have many people around looking at the same problem and they don't understand why they have this certain uneasiness to them, to me, in my opinion, the uneasiness comes from because nobody knows if they can save enough money to survive the next few years. I've never spoken to so many of my friends in my generation. I'm Generation X, I guess, in my generation, where everybody is saying the same thing. How much do we save? I don't understand how prices are so expensive. I don't understand how I'm going to retire. So it's the millennials are having this question. Generation X is having this question. Generation Z, my son's age, they're probably just laughing at the two generations ahead of them, saying, oh my gosh, at least we have Bitcoin from the beginning. And they can save in Bitcoin from the beginning. But a lot of that, in my opinion, a lot of this comes from, I think, as an education system that has never really trained us to think in principles. And what I mean by this is, Nick and I will sometimes work with some of our clients to help them grow their business, because we've spent a lot of time marketing our business and a lot of time understanding marketing and business building. And we'll often break things down to some of our clients when we're talking about business side of development of their lives into principles, strategies, and tactics. And we'll break down business building in business, you need things like trust and authority. Those would be like principles of business building. And then you would take things like that and turn them into strategies. And the strategies would be, what marketing activities are you going to do consistently? Are you going to have consistency to your efforts? Are you going to build a multi-step marketing plan that you are going to implement day in and day out? So you're going to take principles of building trust and authority and try to put them into a strategy to earn that trust and authority from potential customers. What is your strategy? Let's map that out. And then finally, once we have a strategy, what are the tactics? Are you going to use YouTube? Are you going to use Instagram or TikTok? Are you going to do podcasts? Are you going to send letters out, direct email? What are you going to do? Those are tactics. But most people, when they're building businesses, they just focus on tactics. They start a business and they see TikTok and they're like, oh my gosh, I should go on TikTok. They don't understand there's principles to business building, and they don't understand they don't have a strategy, that they're just simply using a tactic. The same thing comes out with financial education. No one understands what money is or a store of value is. They don't understand what really is money. So they don't have a strategy for acquiring more money. And they just look at things like options trading or real estate must get in, or this stock is really hot. I can't tell you how many times in the last just couple days, like 48 hours, I'm getting calls from people like, Tom, do I buy this? Do I buy Bitcoin now? How much should I buy? What should I buy? Should I buy Coinbase? Should I buy the stock for the Coinbase stock? What is this micro strategy thing? Who is Michael Saylor? Everyone's just trying to buy a little bit to kind of get in on the action without understanding the principles of money and the principles of wealth building. They have no strategy and they just focus on the tactics.
Like what's your goal? Like which I see like a treadmill in front of me, right? It's like, oh, I'm on this thing. Oh, there's a shiny thing that can keep me on this. Like it's just totally unaware. I think that's also why it's just so hard to understand Bitcoin eventually. It's just it's a deeply personal challenge in a sense.
Yeah. And when you're struggling to have, to work to pay the bills today, you don't have that much free time either. Exactly. To be fair, right? You're trying to keep up with life, pay up rent and pay up cars. So when you and I are bugging our friends to check out Bitcoin, they're like, listen, would you just stop? I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm going to go home. I've worked all day. I don't want to talk about this right now. So I think that comes up for a lot of people. I just, when we were talking about this, I had a flashback to my aunt who I was sharing about with earlier I forgot to mention something that it just seems so ridiculous now that Bitcoin exists. In the winter months, the construction development that was going on in the town she was in Split would stop. So she would go and pick up leftover steel pieces of rebar that construction workers would put into cement to kind of fortify the cement. And they were kind of scraps. But, she would go at the end of the season and try to pick up these pieces and save them because she knew in the spring, the price of them would have gone up because the dinar would be devalued even more. So those scraps would actually have some value. And then in the spring, she would sell those back to the job sites that needed them or people who were pouring some cement. And that's what she was like reduced to, collecting scraps of steel as a way to, make money. And if I just think like if Bitcoin existed when she was alive, the opportunities to her would have been so different. Instead, she was left, picking up scraps of steel. Anyway, I'm off on a different tangent now. Reminiscing about
I will get back to this because I want to talk about, so what is the opposite of serfdom? But we'll get there because I wanted to go back actually to my first question. We talked, I think, a lot about the problem in different ways, in different depths, right? But okay, people look at Bitcoin and think, this is probably too good to be true. I have no idea how to judge this, as you said, right? Because I never thought about money. And then like, okay, but is it just this Bitcoin thing or these other crypto things, and these guys here on the podcast are talking about valuing your productivity. Whoa, okay, well, that is even further out. Why is Bitcoin so simple then? Like, what is the juxtaposition here? We talked about a very obscure system. People are, participating not in a conscious way. They don't know what money is, etc. Like, what do we put next to that, or how do we show, why Bitcoin is better? What is the simplicity of Bitcoin for you?
Yeah, I mean, such a simple question with so many ways to, I guess, address it. But I guess the simplicity of it, or what really did it for me, was that I realized that when I was working, I was earning the money that, like we talked about, could be devalued. And that when I found Bitcoin, I didn't realize at first that Bitcoin couldn't be devalued. I didn't know. Like, I laughed at Bitcoin when I was first told about it. Nick and I, my brother, joked that we would start the Rockstar coin. If Bitcoin's so valuable, we would start the Rockstar coin. But I think that exact statement is what makes Bitcoin valuable. If we started the Rockstar coin, we could make as many Rockstar coins as we wanted. Bitcoin is finite. There's only a set amount of Bitcoin. And because there's a finite amount of Bitcoin and there's no body, committee, or person in control of that supply amount, that makes Bitcoin, just that alone makes Bitcoin very, very unique. And because Bitcoin is protected by essentially a wall of energy where you or we can't go adjust the amount of Bitcoin. We can't go make changes to Bitcoin. There is nothing else like that to me in the world. If you buy shares of a company, Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, you don't know when the company is going to issue more shares. because there's a committee in charge of that company. There's no one that can make that change to Bitcoin. I didn't understand that. And then if you read history and start to learn about money, you realize throughout history, money emerges in any economy as the most saleable good. So kind of like the most marketable good.
Yes.
Across space, across time, and across scales. You know, what can you carry on yourself that has a lot of value very easily? It's why gold became really valuable. What can you divide into a bunch of pieces really easily? Right? Gold wasn't the best at that. It's why silver kind of became a monetary thing as well.
And saleable is also acceptable, right? And I think we could agree that we could fly to Canada and pay someone in Bitcoin. We could fly, to go back to our example, we could fly to the Congo and pay that person also in Bitcoin. And then we could fly to Singapore and pay that person also in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. So in an economy, I didn't realize that Bitcoin is the most saleable, marketable thing across time. It doesn't decay. It's like why gold was good. Gold didn't rust and decay. Bitcoin's just better at it. It's the most saleable across scales. It can be divided really easily. Bitcoin into 100 million Satoshis every Bitcoin. And across space, it can be transported really, really easily. You and I can send Bitcoin back and forth right now very simply. And those are the characteristics throughout history of what emerges as a good money. And we have this thing emerging in front of us with these characteristics. And if you look back throughout time, that's why gold and silver did so well. And now we have this thing that is better than gold and silver emerging, and it's digital, natively digital. If you just think the digital world is going to expand more than it is today, just that thought alone would make you think that you would want to look at something like Bitcoin. And finally, for me, it's finite and no single person controls it. So that I know if my family stores its time and labor in Bitcoin, no one magically can come around and increase it 7% a year, the amount of Bitcoins out there, or 12% a year. And then I'm debased. So I'm saving my time and labor in the hardest form of money that I've ever seen that has monetary properties, the best monetary properties, the most saleable thing across space, time, and scales that I've ever seen. So, and then it acts as money, right? It's fungible. It can be a unit of account. It can be a medium of exchange and all these things. But because it has these characteristics, it's something that I don't think humanity has ever seen before. And because we've never seen it, people just kind of shrug shrug at it and say, until the corner store down the street from me accepts Bitcoin for my milk, I'm not going to think of it as a form of money.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But when the corner store accepts it for milk, then it's going to be well distributed globally. And the opportunity to get some exchange for this funny money, these euros or these Canadian dollars, American dollars that we have, the opportunity to grab a bunch of them will probably be passed.
Yeah. Well, I could even see a time where, simultaneously products and services are priced in Bitcoin and in fiat money, but the fiat money will probably have like a premium, let's say like a 20% premium in the fiat price than what the fiat Bitcoin exchange rate would be, just because that reward is just worse, right? And then over time, I think that's hard for people also to realize that this will probably take, well, in my mind, it is probably going to take I want to say 15 to 20 years, because then you have the kids that grow up now, let's say 5 and under, they will only know a world where Bitcoin exists, right? And so those kids are going to be like, oh, well, Bitcoin is also a thing, right? Just as the internet is a thing
and Bram, I would say to you that any millennials, the opportunity here is so ridiculously huge. My mind just constantly almost cannot comprehend what's coming in front of us, because in the Toronto area, for anyone who's not familiar, there's Lake Ontario on one side of Toronto, then there's the core of the downtown, and then there's the suburbs around Toronto. There's a bunch of old Italian guys that immigrated into Toronto area in the 1960s, and they bought this land right around Toronto that was farmland. And they just sat on that farmland. They sat on it for 10 years. People kind of laughed oh, why do you have this farmland? There's these cows and, this land isn't even valuable. Why are you scooping up all this land? But They were all in construction and development. And they knew that eventually the city would grow to the point where that land would be then converted into subdivisions, and the value then would be changed dramatically. These Italian families now are extremely wealthy. They're building wings to hospitals, with the side of a hospital with the family name on it and stuff. They've sold land to shopping malls and condo developers. And all they did was find something that was fairly finite, not as finite as Bitcoin, but that land around Toronto there, but closer to the city, was fairly finite. They bought on it, and then they just waited. And I feel like for millennials right now, the opportunity is like a million times greater than that. It's that there's this digital finite land, and there's an opportunity to grab some of it. And if you just grab some of it and wait 20 years, the demand for that is just going to increase every year, just as it did for the land around Toronto. And 20 years from now, people, just like millennials kind of shake their fist in North America at the boomers today, there's going to be a generation behind the millennials who are buying Bitcoin today, shaking their fist at those millennials. These millennials were getting Bitcoin for how much? How were they able to scoop up that much? And as millennials look at the system today and shake their hand at it like, this is not fair, I'm like, you millennials, would you wake up? This is the opportunity right in front of you that you're not seeing. You're so busy, not you, Bram, but there's so many like complaining about the system with the opportunity of a lifetime staring at them in the face.
Yeah, I love that. I love you can like be mad and shake your fist, but once you realize that this is like a totally different system, you can instead of only talking, you can literally walk away, right? Yeah. I talk about that a lot, like it's talk and a walk, where in the fiat world, a lot is talk, right? This $5 bill has value, although it literally says on it, it doesn't, right? But you can just walk away. You can literally walk away. You can vote with your money and be like, I don't like this system. I'm going to choose this other system. And it's not easy. It's pretty scary, actually, I would say, right? When you are like, okay, I'm just going to move this economic purchasing power in this system to this new system that's only 15 years old, because I can find it. And I don't even know how old the fiat system is, right? Some people might think when they haven't studied. So it just feels scary to do something like that. But as you said, it's just also something else I love. It already happened before, multiple times. And similar examples have also happened before, as your example with the land in Toronto, right? Like just the same mechanism of people finding value in something new and other people not paying attention, right? And just, when people slowly move towards the better or more attractive thing, then of course first movers get rewarded for that. That's why we are not lucky. It's not luck.
No. To buy Bitcoin and hold it, you and I both know it's not. And the beautiful part of it, like I think it was the reason I was so excited to talk to Preston is Preston had it was Nico from Ego Death Capital that he had on, and they did this one podcast. I think it was a What Bitcoin Did podcast. I can't remember. I think it was. And they put up like their rates of return on Bitcoin over the last, since inception. And the lowest 4-year compound annual growth rate of any 4-year segment was like 24%. We all know that Bitcoin has a higher appreciation rate. So, annually
over
average,
10 years, it's 70. Okay.
Okay. Is that what it is? Okay. I didn't even know. Okay. 70. So, and then in a 4-year window, when I thought, oh my gosh, if you just hold it for 4 years, the lowest historic compound growth rate is 24%. And I'm trying to beat the 7% M2 or the 12% that we discussed. Oh my gosh. Not only can I beat it, I can beat it by double.
Yes.
I can now
so then you get ahead. Yes.
Now I can get ahead. And if 24% is lower, when I looked back, I think when I spoke to Preston, it was a few months ago. And at that day, I had looked before and it was like 52% compound annual growth rate from the last 4 years. 24% is the lowest, but from 2020, September 2020 to September 2024, whenever that podcast was, the compound annual growth rate through going from like 8 or 9K to 62K, down to 30K, up to 67K, down to 16 or 15 or 16K, and wherever it was on the day I spoke to him. Yeah, it was a 50% compound annual growth rate. And I'm like, oh, problems. That's it.
But that's a no-brainer.
It's finite. Nobody can change the supply. So I can't be cheated that way.
Yeah.
It has this compound annual growth rate that's crushing the fiat debasement rate. I can get ahead and I can custody this stuff myself. That's another thing, Bram, that's so beautiful is that I tell everyone who owns some Apple stock and Google stock, I'm like, great, but you better not hope there's a financial crisis, because if there's a financial crisis and your Apple stock is inside your bank's trading account, you better believe that the bank will sell you out to cash if they need to. They're not mailing you the shares of Apple that would protect your purchasing power.
Yes.
And if they sell you out to cash and to save the financial system, they debase the currency, just like the European Union did a lot of debasement, I think with Draghi in the 2010 to 2015 or whatever that era was in Europe, the great financial crisis in 2020. And they, if they print a lot of money while your wealth is stuck in a financial asset, and if that bank has problems, that bank isn't mailing you the Apple shares as far as I'm concerned. They're just selling you out to cash.
Yeah.
But if the system closes on Friday and there's a crisis on the weekend and they print a lot of money, when you get your money on the Monday, it might have 1/10 of the purchasing power it did on the Friday.
Again, we're flowing into the right part, because I wanted to say, and we'll talk about that, but if you see 50% CAGR on Bitcoin, if you think with your nominal brain, you would be like, oh, that's good, but still people don't pay attention. But this example that you said is perfect, because you will think, oh, I got the money back that was in my brokerage account. Yes, nominally you will have the numbers, let's say $10,000, but if it's debased because everyone had to be saved with, I don't know, 10% or 20% or whatever, then the money you saw, like the number on your screen, lost 10 or 20% value over the weekend. But you're happy with your nominal number, the payback that you got. And this ties into the question I want to ask you. So even if we can have this rational approach, I think how we're talking through this in the past hour, and we get back to this nominal argument. Okay, 50% annual growth rate. Okay. But it's a tulip mania. It's a pyramid scheme. It's too good to be true. It's too young. It's blah, 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 blah. What if the Russians come and the nuclear bomb drops? When I hear that, when I talk to someone, I'm like, okay, you're at the last question. If I answer this question correctly, you're going to buy Bitcoin, right? Like there's no, that's the doomsday question, right? Like what happens but my question is, I have the trust that I could talk to any person about Bitcoin, because I can keep it rational and stay away from any emotional thing. And we just talk to it rationally. Even when you present people with a part or all of the stuff that we talked about, even a 50% annual growth rate, why, it's staring people in the face. The watermelon is $25. I always say as a joke, but it's staring you in the face. Here's the thing. Why is it so hard to understand? What could help people to get them over this hump?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think it's two things ultimately, that unfortunately everything has gotten so expensive relative to incomes in the fiat system that people just don't have excess savings. So when they hear Bram explain this so wonderfully, repeatedly, as you're doing, some people might stop and consider it briefly, but then in the back of their minds they think, well, I only have an extra €100 at the end of the month anyway, so Bram, thanks, but really, is that going to move the needle in my life? So thanks, but unfortunately, no thanks. So to me, that plays a part in some of the Canadians that I talk with a lot. And I hate that that's the case, but there's just no excess money at the end of the day to put into it. And then on the second front, if they do have some excess savings, I think they're so scared to lose it that they want to do what's proven to be true over history. So they can't accept that there might be a fairly new solution. Their mind can't go there. So they just look at a diversified portfolio, or they look at, real estate as the be all and end all, instead of being open to a new technology that might present a different solution. And some people just seem to be wired. I think it comes from a place of scarcity where they feel like there's not enough. So they have to really hold on tight, and they're so scared to lose what they do have. It's much too risky to to consider a new form of money. Where it does change though, Bram, I will tell you, is that I think you probably think sometimes in your life where the unit of account is Bitcoin for you. So, the money that you have in your bank account, you might think of in Bitcoin terms. And if somebody, one of your friends or someone listening to this can just buy a bit of Bitcoin and commit to it for a year or 2 years every month. And as you see that grow, when it becomes slightly meaningful to you, then your mind begins to shift. Because if you think you only have $100 and it's like, oh, big deal if it goes to $124 next year. But as you accumulate more and it compounds, I've seen that with clients of ours that after they've been in now for 4 years, and they can see that compound growth and they start to think in Bitcoin terms and not fiat terms, then it's a really like a phase transition where they start thinking as a unit of account in Bitcoin in their lives, their incomes, their net worth, and not in dollars. But you kind of have to commit for a few years to get there because the dollar value is so small for most people at the beginning that it's difficult to envision. It's tough. Yeah,
it's really
I hope
tough.
when you solve it, Bram, when you solve it, you please let me know.
The first example you give, I think is very true, right? Either people don't have any money or some money, or time and space to think about, how can I escape this? But for me, that's the fucking signal, dude. That should be the fucking signal. Like, oh my God, I'm stuck. I'm fucking stuck. I'm stuck in this system that I just don't understand. And if you don't understand it, then you're like the subject of the system, right? You're not participating in the system. Mm-hmm. You're not participating in this game. You're a subject of the game. And it saddens me also because I also think like, yes, I see Bitcoin as a certain solution. And at the same time, I feel that I want to say like, you don't have any fucking time. You don't have time. Mm-hmm. Like you need to act. You need to work harder. You need to provide more value. You need to get fiat money from the system and buy units or pieces of the units of this other system. Like there's no time. You are in a rush. You need to know that you're in a rush. If you're listening and you think like, oh, this is an interesting thing, like you're in a fucking rush. You need to go. Not only because Bitcoin is running away in a sense, next 10 years, but because fiat is just going down. It's just math. This is not my opinion. It's just happening. It needs to happen actually before it blows up too quick, right? So I don't know, man. It gets me riled up.
I'm the same. I love it, and I think what you're doing with everything you're doing is helping some people, and I can see the shift happening with some people. Like I can see some people who we had some clients just dismiss it for years, and now they get it. So it's happening. I think all of us together, like what you're doing, what Greg Foss is doing, what Jeff Booth is doing, what Ben Perrin's doing, everyone together, I think it is making an impact. So it's that to me is really cool to see. Like, and I feel like it's bringing like-minded people together. And as that network of people grows, I think the impact will compound as well. So there's some hope. There's some hope, Bram. There's some hope.
And we talked about your aunt getting the scrap, right? Like that, like her life turned out to be like that she had to do that, right? To get by, kind of like as the serfdom you described. But once we adopt Bitcoin, like where do we go? What's the opposite of this? Like where do we get back to? Do we get to the craftsmanship and the beauty or something? Like where do we go?
We go to the place where people can offer their community their personal highest and best use. Whereas right now, people make decisions on what to do as a career, many times with association of the income. So for example, a lot of people will go into finance in Canada because they know in the finance industry that there's money to be made, but it burns their soul, whether they will admit it or not. But some of those people that go there are perhaps the best guitarists, the best songwriters, the best bricklayers, the best craftsmen, the best creators of everything in our society. Maybe they actually wanted to be a doctor. Maybe they wanted to be a veterinarian. Maybe they wanted to help kids, but instead they go into finance to pay their bills. Bitcoin will bring us back to a world where everyone's individual, personal, and best use can be what you offer the community, because the money you earn from doing that will be of value. And when you save it, it will go up in value, so that no matter what you're doing, you can build a financial freedom asset base for yourself, as opposed to now you trade your soul for the highest income job that maybe isn't serving you. It destroys you as a person, and you are not serving the community as well as you could. And I think Bitcoin brings us back to people living their true selves and being rewarded for it. And we're all better off for it. When you have the wise elders return, who have enough savings where they can go to the young people and teach them things, and they're not worried about paying their rent. Listen, you're young. Again, I know I've said that several times, but I know older people who are in their 70s or 80s. They're worried about paying their rent. They're worried about how to pay for groceries. They're worried if they have enough money to live the next 10 years. What about if we had elders who had savings that went up in value, that they don't have to worry about these things, and they can go spend time in the schools. They can go spend time taking care of the kids. They can donate extra savings back into the community and feed the next generation, instead of just worrying that the dollar bank account that they have, that they're being told by some financial planner, I think you'll have enough to live. What a life is that? Bitcoin brings us back to a better community. Like, the opportunity here is huge. Bram,
And
sorry,
that is why you study and adopt Bitcoin. I'm going to clip this. This is the best thing you could have ever said. Wow.
Yeah. I'm frustrated like you, Bram. I'm frustrated like you. You know?
Man.
It's like we're running.
Sorry, I just want to say I love what you said. This is where, like, you know, you're soul crushing, doing some fucking Excels on some risk department in some stupid TradFi company, right? And maybe you're a musician and you should have the time and space to figure that out, right? And to share your voice with the world, or whatever your craft is, whatever you're here to do, you should be able to do that. And there's other people that don't care about your individual life as much as you care about it, that influence the reward you get for spending your time and energy. That is not okay. That's just not okay. So you can move, just vote with the money, just use other money. Tell them, you know, literally like the rap song, like, fuck you, pay me in other money, just in other money. And if you don't want to pay me in other money, I don't want to work for you. I think that's where we're going to go. And that's going to force people to deliver real value and compete with each other in a good way. If I'm shitty at baking cookies and I try to bake cookies and have my Bram cookie store and I suck, then, you know, good on me.
Get out.
I do another thing. That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
Agreed. Well said. Love it.
It's interesting that we agree.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
All
Hey,
right.
surprise, surprise. Two
Surprise,
Bitcoiners agree.
All right. I have three, well, maybe short questions. I don't know, but three last questions if you have the time.
Sure.
So we talked about this. We have like the current and the possible future. And people will say like, oh, but, you know, this Bitcoin thing with computers, or it's only 15 years old, whatever, you know, whatever your arguments are when you're still studying or haven't really studied it. Do you think Bitcoin is risky?
No, at this point, I think holding any fiat is risky. Once you study it to the point that you understand how miners work, how nodes work, how the decentralization works, how it's permissionless, how it's distributed around the world, and you really put in the time, no. I think I did think it was risky before. And then when I understood the architecture, which is embarrassing that I didn't understand it earlier. I come from a tech background. I was, you know, an Oracle guy, database company for 9 years. I didn't get it. But once you understand the architecture, then you realize, oh my gosh, the current system's the risky one. Bitcoin's not the risky one. So no, that ship has sailed. And I think the Bitcoin Standard for me did that. First 4 chapters or 72 pages is the greatest like summary of economic history and maybe just summary of economics in general that I had ever read. And then the rest of the book, just understanding how Bitcoin works, really helped me achieve that level of conviction. And then many hours afterwards, reading Andreas Antonopoulos. I think he has like 2 or 3 books, like different colors. I forget the names of them. You realize, oh my gosh, it's like the fiat system is risky.
And when we talked about why is Bitcoin so simple, like I sometimes reply, it just does what it promises to do. This is my set of rules. This is how I work. If you want to adopt me, that's okay. You can only, benefit from adopting or benefit from the rules if you adopt me or staying with the rules. That's it. And it just has a promise and it keeps delivering on the promise every 10 minutes. And that's what gives you certainty towards the future. That's basically it. So another question I had that I'd love to hear your thoughts here. What is a spiky point of view on Bitcoin that you have that not many people share with you?
I think Bitcoin is going to take down the banking system. And I think when I look at what the internet did to the telecommunications companies, and they only survived because they pivoted towards selling data because of the cellular iPhones that came out, but their big business model of selling landlines, it's gone. I don't think the banks can adapt quickly enough to survive what Bitcoin is going to bring over the next 5 and 10 years. And, some people will say, oh, no way, like they'll start becoming Bitcoin banks and you'll still need fiat and so many contracts globally between countries, sovereigns, companies around the world are done in US dollars, that there's going to be the banking system that survives this because of all that, like the US dollar so entrenched contractually into businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so convinced. And it's really just, it's more just like seeing a pattern in history. I'm like, everybody thought any system that you think survives ultimately just dies off. Like nobody thought Bell Canada was like Bell Canada would go down. No. Now they quickly changed to selling internet and data for cellular and they survived, but as their original business died. So I think the banking system is going to be taken down the way it's structured. The central banking system, the way it's structured now, is not going to survive what Bitcoin brings to it, but we'll see. Could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm not tied to it. Like I just think they're not going to make it because those are such big corporations. They can't adapt. They're too slow. Yeah. You're going to have MicroStrategy become a Bitcoin bank. I think Cantor Fitzgerald in New York is talking about becoming a big. These other banks will emerge, that the old existing system will just crumble away. But I don't know. Let's see.
I think it's a very interesting point of view, to be honest, because adapt or die basically comes also from the business world in a sense, right? And I've always wondered, why is a fiat money system winner like BlackRock putting one leg in the Bitcoin boat? Maybe that's adapting to what's going to come, and what you say about MicroStrategy. If they're going to have the biggest, corporate holding, maybe this is the new world bank, the world Bitcoin bank. So I think it's actually a pretty reasonable point of view.
Let's see.
I wonder how much time it takes. I wonder how. It's another thing I love about Bitcoin. It's just so the whole internet culture, right? The whole idea about the most entertaining outcome is the most likely, and this sounds pretty interesting. So why not? All right, last question, and I ask everyone the same question, which is, what is a core belief that you will never let go?
Oh, do the right thing in life. If I want to sleep at night, do the right thing. We have a real estate brokerage, and people ask me all the time, why are you always talking about Bitcoin? We have a podcast. We interview Preston. Why are we interviewing Preston Pish, Lynn Alden, Jeff Booth? What are we doing? Why are you not always talking about real estate? It's because I believe, and my brother believes, and we all believe here, the number one thing in life is to just always do the right thing. And once I understood Bitcoin to the point where it became a core belief of mine that it is the best hard asset in the world, if we are truly trying to serve our clients, live life on their own terms, and build an asset base to be financially free, if I didn't talk to them about Bitcoin, I would not be in integrity. So in life, always do the right thing. Sometimes it sucks. Sometimes it means you have to eat your ego. Sometimes it means you have to financially pay for a mistake you made. It's horrible sometimes doing the right thing. But you just live better. You sleep at night, and it always works out for the best over the medium and long term. In the short term, doing the right thing sometimes isn't easy. But I think that's a core belief. Do the right thing. It's something we talk about here at Rockstar all the time. That's a principle and a thing that I try to live by as best I can.
Awesome, man. Love that. Good karma. Good karma. Yeah, man. Thanks so much for your time. I truly enjoyed this conversation. This was a banger for me. So thank you so much for what you brought here. And yeah, love to stay in touch and do this sometime in the future again.
Yeah, for sure. Can't wait to meet in person, Brian. Can't wait to meet in person. Thank you for this.
Let's do it. Let's do it in Split.
Done.
Cool. All right, man. Thank you. Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.